just get so lit up by sunshine, and I love the way my place feels when the sun comes in. So I just had a really beautiful phone call with a friend in Bali that we needed to catch up. We needed to connect. I don't know if you know Tori Holmes. Maybe you do.
I don't know her personally, but she's friends with a few of my friends.
Yeah.
So like, I know her in the like,
of her. Yeah. I feel like we're in the same kind of circle. So yeah, she's a very, very, very close friend of mine, and we've been missing each other. So I just had this big heart opening conversation with her, and I feel so full.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is. It's interesting. I'm on this sort of like path this year to live more, which sounds so weird unless you are also a parent and an entrepreneur, and you realize like how hard you've been like scrambling just to keep up. And yeah, it's the same thing. Like I'm just yearning for connection and more time with friends and more time with family, and like really dropping into it and being present. And like, it's funny how it changes everything. Like I'm like, I am a new human in 2023.
Yes. And I think we are programmed to deprioritize that because work is the first priority. And so when I look at the number of hours I have in a day, especially time when my daughter's not with me, it's easy for me to go, that conversation's not important, that needs to get done, we need to do this. And yet, like, I'm literally tingling in creative energy right now. Like I could work 4 more hours potentially over the next few days because I just had that. So it's really interesting how it all falls perfectly into place the way it should.
Yeah. And it's, you know, we've been so well taught, right, to be these little productivity units. And I think that we forget like how much, particularly when we do creative work, particularly when we are trying to build some, like how much creativity, like we need such a wellspring of energy and creativity to make that happen. And that doesn't happen when you're just like head down, like trying to pump out tasks.
No, it doesn't. And it fuels, it's interesting that we are talking about sobriety today. It fuels workaholism. Like it fuels the addiction to mask certain things or to hide certain things or to achieve more, to work more, to produce more, ignore these emotions, these needs, these feelings that you have about something to get that done in that way. So it's amazing how it all comes together.
No, it's true. We, you know, everything is a crutch, right? Like, and, you know, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you. I'm a huge fan of everything you do at Sansorium. You make my drinking a lot less life a lot more pleasurable.
So glad.
And, you know, like, what did your life look like before Sansorium? We're going to talk about Sansorium a lot. But like, you weren't always this like amazing non-alcoholic, zero proof, like bringer of goodness. So like, how did you stumble into this?
I definitely think it was finding me over the years. I have not been shy to talk about my relationship with alcohol in the past, which looked like a lot of people's, I would say. I started drinking alcohol when I was about 15 or 16 or so. And one of my earliest experiences was acquiring like a Smirnoff Mickey or something and bringing it to Hornby Island on a family trip. And with all my friends were there, and we went to the beach, and I think I chugged that thing. I just didn't even understand what to do with it. And I blacked out within, 30 or 40 minutes. And then I was really, really, really sick for about 3 days with alcohol poisoning. And the level of shame I went through as a 16-year-old about what I had done and not remembering everything and who I was hanging out with, who I was while I was under, and not knowing all of that, the level of shame I went through, because not only my friends saw that, but my family saw that, and then my friends' parents saw that, and they had known me since I was like 6 years old. So no one said anything explicit, but I felt so embarrassed and so ashamed for my behavior in that way. I didn't really, it wasn't something that I thought, alcohol is just not going to be part of my life like this in the future. So I don't think I ever blacked out ever again after that. So I never went back fully. I did continue to drink for a number of years and had been and got drunk in many ways and many times, but always kind of knew it wasn't for me and tried to skirt really close to looking sober, or to being sober, so that I could stay in this safe place, but still look like I was being a part of society and social gatherings. So I would often I'd go out, but I would be the designated driver. I would ask for shots that were water. I would get, sodas in martini glasses. I would just try and fake it to stay close to people and to stay connected. I would work in bars, I would work in restaurants, I would work in clubs and lounges just so that I could be part of it, but not feel pressure because I was working. Couldn't drink while I was working. Yeah. And then when I got pregnant with Olive and I had this very socially accepted reason not to drink alcohol, it's like my everything just lifted right off my back and I felt free. And no one asked me, why are you not drinking? Why not? Just have one. Just like, what's wrong? No one asked me any questions. Of course you're not drinking, you're pregnant. And then I had a little bit of like grace when I was breastfeeding because people didn't really know what the parameters that you were comfortable with when you're breastfeeding were. So I had about 3 years of relief from social pressure. And I thought, why would I ever stuff myself back in a box to do something that I don't want to do ever again? And at the time when I went back to work, I was working on the rebrand of a sexual wellness company here in Vancouver. And I was looking at sort of the last 10 years of society culture, the sort of taboo culture, like what are nuances? I was working on sex toys. So it was like having its uprising in 2019. And I was like, well, what else is coming? If sexuality is kind of like being liberated right now, what else is going to be liberated? And I could see this trend coming. And I said to the team, I was like, I think sobriety is next. I think it's one of the only things left that we haven't really gone under the hood with and looked at really honestly. We've looked at marijuana, we've looked at psychedelics, we've looked at, we've gone as far back as cigarettes and our movement practice and our food and our spiritual practices. Like everything's being uncovered now. We're letting no stone be unturned. But this is the only thing that we are collectively all doing blindly. And we're making people feel negative and ashamed if they don't participate. Something is wrong with this narrative. It can't last forever. We can't be meditating in the morning, doing all of our things, eating well, moving our bodies, having tough conversations, taking psychedelics for trauma, and then poisoning ourselves unconsciously. We can't. Those two things aren't going to work anymore.
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like there are so many things I want to unpack about what you just said, but like as a dietitian, I think there is a big parallel around food and alcohol, because I think the choices that we make become a mirror to the choices that other people are or are not making. And so, it's the same thing. Like I'm 100% plant-based and people are like, well, you like you don't want, like you used to like that. And I was like, I don't eat that anymore. And there is an interesting tension there. Like you are making this choice. I don't understand this choice, or what does this mean about me?
Yes.
That I'm not making this choice, or don't let me drink alone, right? Like
1000%.
Enjoy your drink. It looks delicious. Go for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna have one, but there's a real dance there that there shouldn't be, like at all. Like everyone should be free to make their own choices.
Absolutely.
But that's just not like
Absolutely.
Drinking is so embedded in our culture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only thing. It's actually very similar to veganism in a way. And when I say to people, oh, it's okay. No, it's okay. I don't drink. I've not asked them anything, but they return and say, yeah, I've really cut back. I was like, oh, that's cool. But I wasn't asking you. And I'm happy for you. But like, we can talk about that if you want. You're okay. Your choices are yours and these are mine. And I respect you for what you'd like to do and what you don't want to do. And I have a lot of compassion for people that do drink for the need to reveal parts of themselves or hide parts of themselves or need it for lubrication to socialize. I think we've all been there. We've all done that before. We've all said, oh, I need a drink, or I'm going to grab a drink before I go out, or I'm going to do this before a date. We've all said it before. So it's not like not drinking alcohol is this higher, more evolved state. I hope we can all see it as this platform of different choices that people are able to make. And and I do call it a poison. And I know that does put it in a position as being negative, but that's sort of scientific in its sense. It's data driven, and that's what's happening to your body. It's like saying certain type of psychedelics elicit poison or are kind of poisonous to the body in some sense, and you need to clear them. It's similar to that. And I'm not saying all psychedelics are that, but alcohol is that it is a toxin and it is running through your body and can wreak havoc on some people's bodies in other ways. And it might look like for some it's joyful and it's exciting and you like who you are. And for others, it's just not that. And so we can't have this one narrative that we apply to all people and assume all people drink alcohol. But today, or at least when I stopped drinking alcohol, that's exactly what it looked like.
Yeah, we do assume. And it's, and it's interesting that you say that, because it's funny how hard that statement hits, that alcohol is a toxin, alcohol is a poison, particularly in light of the new Canadian guidelines, which I'll link for everyone in the show notes. We, as a dietitian, I was taught, women can drink 7 to 9 drinks a week, as a healthy, moderate way, men can drink 14. And now that they have sort of slammed down and said that everything over 2 drinks a week is risky behavior. Yeah. Like many of us drink more than 2 drinks a week. It seems such a small amount, given the amount that we are like encouraged to drink, that this is normal. And I grew up in a Portuguese household. And so like that is what you drank with a meal, like at lunch and dinner. The kids got pop and the grown-ups did not drink water. They drank wine with a meal. And so, it's a huge paradigm shift to go, why do we do this? Why is this considered such a deep part of the human experience when actually we know that it's really, really not good for us?
And some people you see living into their 90s, in the blue zones, for example, where alcohol is still drunk, for afternoons and dinners. You see people living into the 90s, 95s, healthy, clear, and that's where a lot of the defense comes from, I think, is there's people that live so long. And so it's about constitutions. It's about understanding your constitution and knowing, is this a yes for me or a no for me? And just not denying that truth for yourself. And that could be from a physiological perspective or a mental one or an emotional one or a spiritual one. Just not rolling with the waves and being standing up in light of them and saying, is this where I want to stand? Or maybe I'm on the shore, or maybe I'm farther out at sea on a boat. Yeah.
Well, and recognizing that the behavior serves a purpose. And I think, as a dietitian, one of the conversations that I have with people, they're like, oh, well, I wish I could do this and I wish I could eat this way and I want to change this. And so often the first step is acknowledging, well, so what purpose does your current habit serve? Because people are like, oh, it's a bad habit for me or it's not good for me. I was like, no. You wouldn't do it if it didn't have some at least perceived benefit, and going back to that, idea of yeah, like I just need a drink, right? It's been a hard day. I just need a drink. Or like I'm meeting someone new that really freaks me out. I just need a drink. Like I have a ton of social anxiety. Like you put me in like a cocktail party situation where I don't know everyone. It is my worst nightmare. I've had some very hilarious experiences attempting not to drink and do that. And I'm like, I last 30 minutes and then I just back out the door because the purpose it serves for me is exactly that. Like stripping off that layer of anxiety so that I can behave and perform like a quote unquote normal person in those situations. And having to realize that and being like, oh, wow, okay. No, I get that. Like it does actually serve what feels like a positive purpose in my life, even though it feels terrible to my body now. Like in my 20s, like we would not be having this conversation because like I never felt any ill effects from drinking alcohol. And now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, oh, this feels very like not good to me. Like I feel like absolute garbage. And I do the meditation and I move my body and I eat all the plants. I was like, I work too hard to feel like garbage. I do not want to feel that.
Yes. And so the question comes back to not do I or do I not drink? It's do I put myself in that room or do I not? Do I just choose a different space? Maybe the way it's been designed isn't meant for me. And we can take that on a little more of a micro level too. Like, is this person the person I want to spend time with or not? Do I like them? Not do they like me? But qualifying it the other way around, which I hear often in relationships, especially in the dating world, is people trying to figure out, oh, I'm not sure if he likes me, or I'm going to take the edge off so that I can show him my true self. Well, maybe, and this is not for everybody, but maybe if you were just your true self, but you also were in the direction of qualifying them, you'd actually find out if there was a second date at all in the first place. And how does that person create safety to make you feel comfortable enough to reveal yourself? And maybe you don't also have to reveal yourself on a first date. Maybe that's not even up for grabs yet. Like you are able to go at your own pace. There's just so much more conversation way beyond alcohol here, and or any substance as well. I think that we drink or we go the opposite of sobriety emotionally often with our behaviors and our patterns and the food we eat and the sometimes the careers we choose and the people we spend time with. It definitely goes beyond alcohol here.
Growing up for you, what was like your family's relationship with alcohol? Like, was alcohol a big fixture? Like, were you like, no, I'm definitely choosing something different for myself? Or were you, like your parents, like, what was that like?
Well, I'm half Scottish, half English with a sweeping amount of Irish in there. So I've got alcohol in my blood, as they say. I could be a heavy drinker. And many people in my family are, especially on the Scottish side, my mom's side. And we grew up, my mom was a lover of wine. She always had a nice big bottle of cold Chardonnay in the fridge for when she got home from work. It was, she was a hard-working mama. She'd have 2 jobs sometimes. She was climbing the corporate ladder. My dad and my mom immigrated when they were 19 and about 24 to Canada. So they put themselves through school with no family support, had 2 kids. They really had a go at it, a hard go at it in many ways, middle-class family in the 90s. And it was seen as a reward to drink alcohol at the end of a hard day from their culture. And in this one too, it was a reward. So they did it without any consciousness of what that meant for their bodies or for the relationship with us. And what I saw, particularly with my mom, not with my dad, but I just saw this woman, my mom, go from hardworking, like strong, independent, so super smart. My mom was like everything to me. And then alcohol kind of drained her and it relaxed her, but in a way that felt like she was leaving us or leaving me. And she had to escape us at the end of the day because life was too hard. And that was never her intention consciously. That was never what she aimed to do, but it felt like that as a kid. And so I created a bit of a negative relationship to alcohol because I saw my mom leave me each night as she, finished off a bottle of wine. And I was able to tell her that actually last year for the first time. And I really didn't know that was the storyline for me until I went through this journey with her, creating the business, having some confronting conversations with her about what alcoholism, like the true addiction to it, meant versus gray area drinking and binge drinking and problematic drinking. We talked a lot about the spectrum together, and I had to ask her where she felt she fell on that spectrum so that we could present to the world our opinions and our truth about alcohol. And we had some confronting conversations, but it led to some of the most beautiful reconciliations and resolution in terms of what was happening for her and what was happening for me, and allowing her to see me in that relationship dynamic as the child. And now as the, fully grown adult that has a child too, we've just really blossomed. And I'm so grateful that this was maybe the only thing between us, living and very present, that we were able to dissolve. And I say today, like, I got my mom back. She doesn't drink alcohol anymore, and she lives what she calls an alcohol-free lifestyle. It's a conscious choice that she makes. She doesn't count, chips. She's not in an AA program or anything. She just kind of went overnight, stopped drinking after she read William Porter's book, Alcohol Explained, which is an amazing book. But she knew she didn't want to give up the ritual. That reward was not going anywhere for her. She really wanted to keep that in her everyday lifestyle. And so what a great pivot it was to find just alcohol-free wine so she could continue on and be as merry as she wanted to at the end of the day, just without that. But I do think it's caused a lot of reflection in her. And there's still just more conversations to have about that. But I think we've healed in relationship to each other in this business and in the last 2 years because of our shared sobriety and our willingness to look at what's true.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it really sort of like makes me think about mommy wine culture and like how insidious that is. And, life is hard. Motherhood is hard. Life is hard. But yeah, it's just like, this is why mommy drinks, and like women getting together, and like out come the bottles of wine. And it is this sort of shared bonding ritual. And you're like, why? Like, why do we do this? Like, what is it about motherhood that we're like, oh, so now we drink?
Yeah.
Like it's damaging for sure. And same thing. It's this idea that like, instead of looking at like the hard truths about what it is to be a parent and like what you're going through and, the thoughts that are sometimes very unmotherly that come to your mind in these struggles, we're like, no, we're just going to like, slide in the bottom of a wine glass and just like, let that all go away.
Yeah. Make it comedic, I think, is often sometimes we use comedy to plaster things that we don't want to talk about. Alcohol is used that way too. And with Instagram now being so widely used, we see mommy wine culture more now than we did before. So my mom grew up in that culture too. And I was a child of that, but no one knew that was all happening in every household. But now we all know. So when the mom cheerses the Instagram, camera at the end of the day, when you can see the kids watching TV behind you, oh, now I get it. Now I see it. It's 3 accounts in a row now are doing that. Okay. So now we know it's pervasive, right? But it wasn't that way. And Instagram was what illuminated that for us, not some scientific journal. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, getting back to that idea of the mirror, right? Like when you just see it reflected back at you, you're like, oh shit. Okay, I see what's going on here. And also this idea of, sort of like creating ritual in our lives too, because I feel like for a lot of people that like after work drink is that like, okay, so this is what signals, you know, the change in my day. Like even if you're like, you know, not using it to numb out entirely, but it is this sort of like, yeah, so like that was that part of the day. And now I have this glass of wine and I make my dinner. And I think for people who are contemplating, because gosh, and you know, I of course I posted on Instagram, like I think it was like 5 years ago. Like I had just sort of looked at how I was feeling and I was like, this has got to stop. Like I don't feel good. And I just sort of like cut drinking out of my life entirely. But I was left with holes of exactly that. The like, so at 5 p.m., what do I pour? I was like, this bubbly water's kind of boring. And like going out on a Friday night and, you know, it's not like it is now. Like last night I was at Como and they have no G&Ts, you know, like you can order like a beautiful non-alcoholic G&T, but 5 years ago it wasn't like that. So you're like, what's Saturday night? And you're like, what's the special thing? And I think that's what's so incredible about what you're doing with Sansorium, because for people who want that way of marking a moment, or for people like me who just like really love food and drink, like I love tasty things. I'm like 2 pregnancies, like no more cran and soda. Like I just can't do it. You know, like if I see another cran and soda, I'm going to retch. So it's so incredible that like, now I can buy like an Oddbird sparkling and like feel like I have this really special drink because it's Friday night and I want to like celebrate the week. So
yeah.
How hard was it to actually find all of these drinks? And like how did you do this? Because I feel like it didn't exist before you. And then all of a sudden here are all of these things.
Here it exists. Well, that is a product of our own experience, because my mom immediately went to the liquor store and said, what do you have that's alcohol free? And they pointed her to this dusty shelf at the bottom of the liquor store and said, there you go, take whatever's there. It was like, I think at the time it was Freixenet, it was Spanish cava, you know, non-alcoholic. And she drank that and it's okay. And we drank the other stuff and we tried Loxton and we tried all the little grocery store wines. And there's only so much you can do of the same thing. Like humans love variety. We live for something a bit more sensorial, a little bit more exciting. Otherwise, our routine gets a little old. And so after a year, we were like, there's got to be more than this. Like, how is this so untapped? And we just took a quick look around the world and everywhere else is doing it so much better than we are. Surprise, surprise. So Australia has a ton of amazing alcohol-free brands, lots of innovation. They've been at it for a decade. They're doing so well. You know, the food and beverage culture there is rich and it's exciting and it's always reinventing itself. So I'm not surprised they did it and they started it. The UK and France, you know, just lots of brands coming out, being pumped out of these countries, and good quality products too. The US is coming up with lots of new things. So it was just Canada. It was just the fact that we were kind of slow to the gate and no one had really jumped on it yet. So when we started Sansorium, there was about, I would say 4 or 5 marketplaces already in Canada that had been started in other provinces and 2 here in Vancouver. And we tried a lot of their things. We tried a lot of their products. Didn't quite find the quality we were looking for. And that's not to be, you know, snobbish or, you know, we just have a preference for certain things and we were just looking for something else. So it was very clear to us that we had to do it ourselves. And we wanted to create a space for ourselves, because I also saw a lot of things around the narrative about sobriety that wasn't inclusive enough. And it was kind of an all or nothing mentality. And it was all about, even the words that were being chosen to brand these marketplaces were purely about sobriety. And I wanted to show you that you don't have to be purely sober to be here. It doesn't have to be black and white. There is a gray area. And there's this whole area called mindful drinking that could include you having alcohol in it with consciousness, with the understanding of why you are doing it and what the purpose is for and how much and how often and what, because there's lots of different types of alcohol. So it's just a little bit more mindfulness. And we have people at our company that still drink alcohol from time to time, but they know what they're drinking, how they're doing it, how much they're putting in, and it's very mindful. So we needed to rebrand the whole look and feel of the space. And coming from a branding background myself, I felt up for the challenge. And my mom has a deep history in operations and business development. So she was up for the job, and my sister was available to kind of hold us together. So we went for it, and we started teaching ourselves how to import, which is a whole, I cannot imagine, whole other business in itself. But we chose a few brands from around the world that we really wanted to see in Canada. And we went to them and just said, will you give us a chance? You know, they're like, sure, pay up front, buy the product. Okay, great. We'll be right back. We'll just go find some money and then we'll come back to you. And so we did that, and we started bringing in products, and we built Sansorium with an amazing agency in Vancouver who really understood our mission, because they too have worked on alcohol for many years. And we don't see alcohol evaporating from our culture in our lifetime. It will become adjacent to living alcohol free, but it's not going to be fully eradicated. So they were like, well, yeah, let's talk more about the sensuality of feeling. Like, that's what Sansorium means. It's a place where you can feel more, where you can experience pleasure, where you're not there to dull, to numb, but to see in technicolor, to actually experience the world around you, to feel real connection, because that's what we're all going out to do when we meet up with our friends, isn't it? It's to feel something. So they got it, and we just wanted to create this really beautiful, fun, and exhilarating place that you feel like you could dip in for, as they say, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And they say that in AA. And just have fun with it. Like, let the expectations go, drop any stigma, drop any taboo, and just be present with yourself.
And working with your family, how has that been for you?
I always say this, but I honestly could not have imagined doing this in my lifetime. I didn't think, I mean, I just came from working on sex toys. Like, I have a Catholic family. Like, it wasn't the most obvious jump for me. And I love how open-minded they are. And my family is just such great spirits. They really are so good-spirited. And we were all at this career crossroads, so it was perfect timing. And my mom really spearheaded this. She called us and said, I know what I want to do, and I know I need to do it with you. I can't do it alone. So are you on board? And I just said, like, yes. And I just didn't turn back. So we have learned so much about each other, and we've had to work out ways of communicating with each other that are healthier than our programming as parent and child from that era, because you do come with all of that stuff. It doesn't just go away. You come with all of your programming. So we've had to work that out, and we've developed some communication systems that work for us. And my mom is such a workhorse. Like, I can't believe the stamina that she has. And I'm so inspired by her all the time. And she's just lives with so much grace for everybody. And she's so reliable, and you can really trust her. So having a person like that you work with is amazing. It's such a good feeling that I think the platonic, business corporate relationships lack sometimes. So there's a massive pro. And then at the same time, like, sometimes you don't feel the pressure to work sometimes. And that can maybe make you go a little bit slower than the traditional corporate space might, where they have so many arbitrary deadlines and so much arbitrary, like, meetings. Whereas we're like, are we feeling like this today? Do we want to move this quickly?
Yeah.
Do we want to hustle and break our backs in order for this thing to be achieved? I can easily say no because I'm working with my sister and my mom, and they understand that we gift each other time and space to be ourselves. So in the past, I may have worked more, and I would have worked, and I still work a lot now, but I would have worked in a different hustle frequency in the past.
Yeah.
But at this stage, I definitely feel more at peace than I've ever felt before.
It's incredible. And I feel like it's always, when you're building something for yourself, it's a very different feeling than when you're doing it for someone else too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. My mom and my dad said, like, you know, we could pass on a house to you, which is worth X with some money in the account, or we can use that money and build something together and see what comes out of that. What would you prefer? And I was like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. Thank you. Like, what a gift, what a journey, what a trip that we get to go on together. You know, if there's anything left, cool. But at least we had these experiences. This is so much cooler than an inheritance, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you've given so much to everyone else, because I think, you know, one of the lovely things about what Sansorium offers is not just sort of like the pleasure and the experience of having something lovely that allows you to, you know, still feel like yourself and still feel good in your body. But I think that, you know, going back to that notion of choices and how our choices affect others, when you can just order something, or you can just pour yourself something at a house party,
Mm-hmm.
and because you don't owe anyone your reasons for your behaviors.
Mm-mm.
But it just makes it so much easier to be like, oh yeah, I have a drink. They're like, do you have a drink? You're like, yeah, I have a drink right here. It's wonderful. And like that conversation just doesn't even need to happen too.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, you're so right. And I do have a vision, and this is already happening, which is so great, where you go to a party and they hold up 2 bottles of wine and they say, which one would you like, the one with or without alcohol? And it's a non-judgment process. You just go with or without, and you get your glass topped up. And you can also change your mind halfway through the night and go to the other side if you want to. And I'm seeing that already. And that, I mean, thankfully they know I'm coming, so they prepare to these parties. But my friends that would normally just pick up tons of alcohol are now picking up their alcohol from the liquor store and going to the juice truck and picking up 4 or 5 bottles there. And I'm showing up to the party and they're saying, we've got both. And it's so refreshing, not only for me, but then I get to look around and watch the other people benefit from that too. And especially in January, I went to an event and a friend had done that. And surprisingly, the alcohol free was being drank more than the alcohol because people were taking the month off. And I was like so happy to see the joy in the room because everybody felt on the same page with each other. And I was, you know, we were talking about it and I was pouring and they were pouring. It was so cool. And there wasn't this like, oh yeah, I got some sparkling water for you. It's in the fridge whenever you're ready. You know, that's happened so many times. But there's just a different culture emerging, and I'm really happy to be here.
I see it with our friends too, you know, like in the summer, there's 2 coolers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the non-alcohol, and there's non-alcoholic beer in that cooler. You know, I went to like a dance party. A friend of ours is a DJ and held this like rave for middle-aged folks, as they call it.
Nice.
And I was able to go up to the bar and get a noni, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was like, I don't need alcohol. I like dancing. Dancing is fun enough. And so I had non-alcoholic beer all night, and it was so awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I mean, for people listening to this too, this idea is like, if you are hosting, like offer a non-alcoholic choice that is a valid choice.
Yeah.
Water is not a valid choice.
Yeah.
Water's for when you're thirsty.
Yeah.
Like when you're partying, you want something delicious.
Yeah. And there's so many drinks out there that can offer state changes. And I think that's what people forget about adaptogens, but also the placebo effect of drinking something that's non-alcoholic of the alcohol version. So if you drink wine for a long time and you got a little red in the chest and a little weak in the knees, I guarantee a few glasses of that red wine without alcohol that tastes the same and has the same aromatics and the same palate and the same feeling down your throat, it can elicit a placebo effect if you let it. Beer, for me, drinking a noni, honestly, I feel like I can't drive after, because it elicits such a similar experience as an alcoholic beer for me that I question whether I'm actually drinking a noni or not. But it is alcohol free. And so then I get to just turn the placebo off when I want to and continue on with my night, my next morning, my day, free of any of the side effects that I don't like. But it's real. If you want to feel relaxed, one sip of a beer, an alcoholic beer, can't possibly relax you that quickly, but you feel relaxed. So the same can happen with a non-alcoholic. Just let it happen. Just let it be.
And I'm excited as the marketplace grows, because I see, like, in the US, especially because I am very into like plant medicines and, you know, all of these adaptogenic drinks, like playing with those kind of things, playing with the rhodiola,
the GABA,
ashwagandha. Yeah, exactly. Which is, you know, such a fun sort of space to play in. I know that we're coming up on our time, and I wanted to ask you before we go into the rapid fire questions. There was one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because you are an entrepreneur and you are a parent, and you're not taking the edge off with alcohol. So, like, what are the practices that are so important for you for self-care right now?
Yeah. Well, it's so traditional. I mean, understanding after 5 years of sleep deprivation with a child, and managing my lifestyle around hers, sleep is my first recovery tactic, and there's just nothing new that I could say about that. You've heard it everywhere, so I will always resort to that. But for fun stuff, I love that kin makes me feel the way I want to feel when I drink it. So I will definitely reach for one of those, and I'm hoping they're more available in Canada soon. But you can definitely get some when you go down to the States and bring it up, and I will pay you to do that too. It really works. And Jen has created such a beautiful concoction inside of kin that really does mood boost or relax when you have one of her tonics. So I would go with that. I'm, as you know, big into cold plunging, and have been for a few years now. We're in our 3rd year as a kind of crew of meeting every Saturday. And I cannot tell you how that has changed my mental health in the last 3 years at consistent level. And it's also boosted my immunity like crazy. I'll go through one day of feeling, you know, a little wavy under the weather, and I'm back the next day, or I can kind of tweak it with topping up my vitamin D and that kind of thing, and I'm back. That practice, and the fact that a lot of us are sober at that practice too, is really interesting, because you're choosing to do hard things on a Saturday morning when you're typically hungover. None of us are hungover. There's no room for that. Yeah. And we're also walking straight into things that we fear. And I still, to this day, get to the edge of the water and go, can't do it. No.
Every single
time. Do you experience that too?
Every single time. And it's funny, I've let the practice go this winter because life has ramped up so much. And the kids, every weekend morning, the kids have had activities. So I have no space to do it right now. And I miss it, because it was a solid 2 years. But it doesn't matter if we stay in there for 15 minutes in January and it's like 3 degrees out, and you're fine. The very next week, you're like, this is not right. I should not. And then you just go straight in, and you're like, oh, look what I can do.
Look what I can do. Yeah. Look, I always say, set a goal, achieve a goal, and every step is achieving it. And if I've done nothing that week, I've proven to myself that I can in that very moment for 15 minutes. Yeah. I also drink, like everybody right now, athletic greens. I don't know if that's a thing that you would promote, but it is, in a hustling kind of world, everything, lots of preschool, lots of driving, saves me and gives me a baseline for health that I like to sit at. Yeah. I take sort of like the list of supplements. I dance a lot. I love to move in that way. And I keep my practice very versatile. So I dance with those folks over there. I'll go to that dance class. I'll do a class with India. We did a strut class last night. I keep it versatile because, as I said, humans love variety. And if I want to feel a state change, I have to move myself. I can't expect it to be different right while I'm sitting in this very seat looking at the same computer. So I get out and I move and I see different people, or I pick up the phone, or I get my daughter to force me to go on a walk. And I just, we just move our environments. And that always changes things in my body. And then I have hard days like anybody else. And I go see my therapist and I commit to having tough conversations. And I sit with my feelings and I cry when I'm feeling sad. I just let it all be as natural as it can be. And what more of a human experience can we ask for, really?
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful place to leave it, because I think the secret to, I've decided in my ripe old age of 43, like the secret to life is just to really be in it. Like we just spend so much energy avoiding where we are right now, thinking that it's going to be too hard. And I think for me, that's what the cold plunge really serves, is this idea that I don't have to avoid the hard thing. I can be in the hard thing. And then like, who the heck was expecting that the hard thing is actually going to be the most joyous thing, the thing that like makes me feel strong and calm and like I'm really living in that moment.
Yeah. And we forget that the definition of resilience is not that you look the same going through hard things as you did when it's easy, but that you have the ability to come back to center after the hard thing. Go lose it during that hard thing. It's okay. But do you have the ability to come back to center afterwards? That's, I think, what we forget about being a resilient human.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
How did an hour go by?
I know. It really does. Well, we're just going to have you back, and then we can have more conversations. But I don't want to leave out without the rapid fire. So
let's do it.
Yeah, lots of little bitties. So you have 20 minutes all to yourself. You're not allowed to be productive. No housework, no work. What do you do?
Sleep.
Beautiful. Yes, that's a very good answer. Hidden talent.
I can touch my nose with my tongue.
That's impressive. I cannot. I am tongue-tied. Anytime someone can do like a tongue thing, I'm like, your favorite non-alcoholic drink right now?
Ooh, the Grenache from France, or fully organic Grenache. It's beautiful.
Next place on your travel list?
I'm going to Mexico next week, but Brazil. Definitely Brazil.
That one's on my list too.
Yeah.
All right. The best thing about being a mom?
Oh, when she falls asleep on my chest. Yeah. It would make me cry.
Yeah. That is the greatest feeling in the world. Well, thank you so, so much, Fiona. I love this conversation, and I think it's really just going to invite people to think a little bit differently about how they welcome alcohol into their life.